Good morning. I'd like to call the facilities meeting to order. Today's the 22nd. It's 10:05. We're 35 minutes late, but that's okay. All good. Motion to approve minutes of the prior meeting. Do I have a motion for that? Motion moved by Mr. McGowan, second by Mr. Diamond. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Ms. Seaver abstained. Okay, motion approved. Okay, Mr. Hajos, would you like to go to the airport first or the public works?
Why don't we do buildings and grounds first?
Okay.
The first thing that we have on there is a request to extend the contract for generator maintenance. This is the routine maintenance on the generators throughout the county. Normally, we put an extension in the resolution request. This one didn't have one. So it would be the second extension, but I also put in a resolution request so that we could extend it one more year after this as well.
Okay, do I have a motion to extend that contract? Motion by Mr. McGowan, second by Ms. Seaver. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next item is on page 8 of the agenda, and it's a request for a notice of intent to fill the position cleaner number 10. This is due to a retirement.
Okay. Do I have a motion to fill that? Motion by Mr. McGowan, second by Mr. Bruno. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
There are no referral or pending items this month, and then the last thing I had for the committee was kind of an update on the court facility. As most of you know, phase 1 and 2 of the court facility is completed. It was completed probably around April. They've been in there since then, so it's almost a year. We have just received the final comments from OCA on phases 3, 4, not quite 5, but 3 and 4, which would include the Supreme Court area as well as the Commissioner of Jurors. And we've just instructed Clark Patterson, our engineer, to put the package together to go out to bid. We're only going out to bid for materials. We're going to do the work in-house here at the county with our staff. And then the final thing I have, and I'm not sure Supervisor Bramer is still here, there's part of the discussion for the court facility, the last or final piece besides the DA's area, is to do something in the front of the county center where we have that expansive amount of concrete to the old entrance to the Supreme Court as well as the front entrance to the county center. So most of you know what it is and what it looks like. It really doesn't get used anymore. We were proposing to remove most of the concrete in there, put some green space in there. I think Supervisor Bramer, if you want to talk about maybe there's going to be a memorial or a talk of a memorial out there. What I've done is I've brought kind of a photo here. I can pass this out to committee, but I really want committee's input on what they would like to see out there. But again, there's just a huge amount of concrete it's really not needed. That front entrance does not get used that much anymore. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. So, is there any discussion on what this committee would like in that big open space? I'm not even sure if we've had time to think about that much, to be honest with you.
I'm not looking for anything to be decided here in committee. I'm just looking for, let's say maybe by the end of February, if we can come up with maybe some ideas. We'll have Clark Patterson kind of do a rendering once we come up with those ideas, and then we'll bring it back to committee then to decide what they're going to do, and come back with a cost as well.
Okay, Mr. McGowan?
Yeah, by taking out the concrete, we'd have a better center area. How about bronze statues of all the supervisors at that particular time?
That would have to be fairly extensive, I'm sure. Ms. Seaver?
Perhaps, well, I'm not even going there.
Okay.
Maybe we could employ some different community groups to talk about. I know many counties have crime victim memorials, or, it is court-related, perhaps something around criminal justice, but, it does give us a nice opportunity to recognize, as you mentioned, and I'm glad you brought it in committee. Thank you.
Ms. Bramer, did you want to say something?
I do.
Okay.
I was on the warrant County Bar Association's board, executive board, and for a while there was a talk of doing a memorial for one of our very distinguished jurists who passed away a few years ago. Richard Bartlett was from Glens Falls, lived in Queensbury. He's very well known, was known throughout the state for, I can't even list off all the things that he did. He was a judge, he was in the legislature, he like overhauled the criminal justice system. I mean, he was an amazing person, and the Bar Association would like to do something to in his honor, and I think the idea is like a kind of like a rock memorial, not a statue, but like a place where it would honor him out front here at the courthouse.
Will you be,
I'm not on the board anymore,
okay.
but I believe that I did get a request the other day from the executive director asking if there were any updates, and I said that the core project was still underway, and so I talked to Kevin, and he said, you know, we haven't quite got to that point yet, but if it would be the consensus of the committee that there could be a small place set aside for this type of memorial, the Bar Association obviously would come up with the money to do it. We just need permission to have it here.
Okay, so that would be one request for something. That's a very sound request. So I guess I'll say to the committee, you said at the end of February, if anybody in this committee, or if you know of any groups that may be interested in having or wanting something there, to please contact them or contact Mr. Hajos, because there's nothing set in stone, no pun intended, as to whether it be Mr. Bartlett or Judge Bartlett or anyone else. It's very open at this stage is my point. So, yes, Mr. McGowan.
It is a large area, and I redact my bronze statues of all the acting supervisors at the time. But no, I think it's large enough where we could do like memorial type things of maybe some of the people we'd like to honor coming to the front of our county facility. So.
Okay. All right. Now, over to the airport, Mr. Hajos?
Yep.
Okay, everybody get your airport agenda out, please.
And I'll turn it over to Don DeGraw right now.
Good morning, everybody. I have two resolution requests on the books here. They're both for the purchase of a new airport snow sweeper. We have a state grant in place for $640,000. It's 90% state, 10% local match. So the first resolution request is to establish a capital project, and the second is to shift money from the reserve to increase the budget code for the local share of $64,000.
Okay. How old is that sweeper, Mr. DeGraw?
87. Our
87.
current one's 1987.
32 years old.
32 years old.
Working right today as we speak.
As we speak, it does work. But is it tough to get parts for that? Because of the 32-year-old sweeper, I'm sure there's a challenge.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's time for a new one, and
Okay.
and
It's a
stay-
90-10 Fed, 10 county. Do I have a motion to move that? Motion made by, moved by Ms. Hogan, second by Mr. Bruno. Any discussion on that? Yes, Mr. McGowan and then Mr. Diamond.
Yes, Don, this sweeper, is it the one we had out after the
Balloon Fest?
Balloon Festival?
Yes.
Big,
So-
self-propelled on the front with the air blower, yes.
Oh, we had that one out too, and then we also,
Yeah,
would we
yeah.
have our road ones there
And
too?
the roll ones out as well.
Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's a different sweeper, it's actually more of a blower type sweeper that,
Yes, it's really made for snow removal. It has a big 20-foot sweeper head on it that sweeps the snow, and then as it goes by, it has a blower head that blows it off the runway.
that's just, yeah, it's, because it seemed like a little bit of money for just a regular sweeper there.
No,
so
it's not a
It's a
stacking-
super de-duper sweeper, huh? All right, thank you.
Mr. Diamond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple quick questions, Don. What's the history of the maintenance expense on that piece of equipment, the last 5 years on an annual basis?
I don't have that exact number for you. We typically use it at the end of snow removal, so we'll plow, we'll blow snow, and at the very end, as a cleanup, we blow the sweeper out. So it regularly needs new bristles because the bristles wear down. And,
And what's the cost of that?
A bristle replacement, $5,000 maybe.
Okay.
3
And
to 5.
the county's share, matching share, $64,000, correct?
For the purchase of the
For
sweeper.
purchase. What's the balance in that capital project after that $64,000 been applied to this purchase?
Well, it's this, we have a grant for $640,000.
Is that the balance after the money's been moved?
In the
Oh,
reserve.
oh,
Yes, in the reserve
I-
account.
I'm not sure what's in the reserve right now. I'd have to go back and look at it. I mean, we budgeted a reserve, for any type of local, shares that we would have this year. So it's part of the budget that we had processed.
So
this year.
we appropriate monies on an annual basis to this capital reserve?
Yes.
Okay.
We do, yes. For any local share that we typically have for our capital, for our federal aid projects, yes.
My last question is, what happens to this snow sweeper that we currently have? Do we try
Well,
to sell it?
it's still functional, and what I like to do is keep it as in reserve. So if we have a breakdown, I still have a snow sweeper. Right now, I only have one, so if I break down, I have no sweeping capability. So I'd like to keep it as a spare.
Thank you.
Ms. Seaver?
Is this something that has to be passed today, time sensitive?
I'd like it, yes, I would say so, because I need to get the bid out. I need to start this project and get the bid out so we can have it for next season.
This would go to finance? Would it be appropriate to just ask for that report of the maintenance and expense that Supervisor Diamond is requesting, and then confirmation of the cost share and the appropriate? It surprised me a little about appropriating money to capital projects last year into this, so maybe just some clarification on that before it goes to finance, before finance.
Yeah.
I can bring it to finance. I will.
Did you understand the second part of it?
I do.
I appreciate that.
Any other discussion? Mr. McGowan?
Yes, I guess the only thing, I like the idea of having a backup for emergency, this being new, and we've had one for so many years. I think it's a great idea, but I just want to make sure it just doesn't sit there, because if it sits there, it doesn't help the machinery either, not getting used, so.
Yeah, we're very cognizant of that. We take care of our equipment. This one's 1987, it's still working. It's actually out there on the runway today working, so we take care of that.
Sorry, not that I was questioning, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure, we didn't collect dust on it.
No, we'll keep it covered, keep it heated in the winter, and keep it ready to rock and roll.
So we could always sell it as, always garaged.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? We do have the motion on the floor, right? And we'll
Right.
second it. All in favor of?
Oh, all right.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. That was a quiet aye, and an even quieter no, but that's fine. Okay, continuing, Mr. DeGraw?
So we're in the process of identifying sites on the airport for solar development, leasing land for solar development. The intent of that is to increase our revenue stream through land lease. In order to do that, we need to change the land use through the FAA's eyes from aeronautical to non-aeronautical on the airport. And we have a request in with the FAA to do that right now. I'm waiting for some feedback. Once we get positive approval to change the land use to non-aeronautical use, we're putting out a request for proposals and hoping to get some good bids back from that. At the last meeting, there was somebody, it might have been Mike Wild, asked if I could provide a map of the areas that we're looking at. And if you look on page, was it 4?
Yep, 4.
Page 4, you'll see there are 3 areas, Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, shaded on the map. And those are the areas that we're looking to lease out for the solar developments. A total of 94 acres, plus or minus.
Any discussion on that? Thank you, Mr. DeGraw, for putting that map together for us so that we can get a very clear picture of what acres would be up for possible solar development, and how many and so forth. And the total obvious acres is 94 acres. One area is up to 45 acres, then another couple, 15, and another 34. Yes, Mr. Weil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I know you don't really agree with this concept, but I have a question about the acreage that we're using. It looks like Merit Duty Area 3. If the county and the FAA ever decided that we wanted to expand the airport, would that region preclude us from doing something like that?
Well, in any agreement that we have with a contractor for the lease of that land, we'll have an exclusion in there that says if in any event that land is needed for airport use, that we'd be able to cancel the lease. So we're never going to give somebody total use of it, and the FAA wouldn't allow that anyways. Also, the FAA is going to limit us on the number of years with the lease too, because they have that same concern. So I don't think that that's going to be an issue long term.
Okay. Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the timeline on the release of the RFP?
Well, right now I'm waiting for the FAA to get back to me on whether they're going to approve
Okay.
the change of land. I think from the time that I get that, we'll probably have an RFP out within 8 weeks.
Has the
or
RFP
less.
been drafted?
No, not yet.
Oh, it's not drafted. Will we be able to review the RFP when it's available?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks for that update, Mr. DeGraw. Where are we? We're on 5?
The last item we have under referral and pending items, last month, 2 months ago, we brought the discussion of whether or not we should keep our Part 139 certificate at the airport. Don and I have gone through the numbers. We think there could be approximately a saving of $10,000 a year, or $10,000 less expense a year, give or take. I know there was discussion last month that people were concerned that we weren't going to keep maybe the airport as safe as it should be. We're not. We never stated that. Basically, we're going to keep the same standards that FAA would require us to have. We're just not going to need the inspections from them anymore if we were to remove Part 139 certificate. I know a couple emails went out. I believe Supervisor Bramer had sent a couple out. She had spoke with Rich Ayer, who had provided some information as well. And if you'd like, I could have her talk to some of what she had heard from others.
Yeah, sure. Ms. Bramer? I think the mic's not on there. Can
Oh.
you get it turned on? Can you turn, is there a switch that turns it on? Somewhere?
It looks like it's on.
There you go. Beautiful.
Okay, so I had suggested at the November meeting that we talk to the Airport Advisory Committee, because that was an important committee back when Supervisor Sieber helped get that off the ground years ago. It turns out it doesn't really meet anymore, so what I did was reached out to all of the members via email, and I did get input back from Rich Ayer, which Steve's here, so I'm not going to speak for him. Tom Clements also got back to me and said that he thought that it was an okay concept to get rid of the Part 139 certification, although he did have a concern about our insurance carrier, because that was the advice that he got for his own plane. So I know you guys looked into that for our insurance. And Dr. Schwenker was here, like I said, but he had to leave, and he did send me a very thorough email, so instead of trying to summarize all that, I'm just going to read it for you, okay?
Sure.
It's not that long. Claudia, oh, this was after he went to his meeting of pilots.
Mhm.
So they talked about it at one of their meetings, and then this is the feedback that he gave to us. Okay? Claudia, thanks for asking for pilot input. As you know, 14 CFR 139 rules are in many ways a leftover from pre-deregulation airline operations. Many years ago, there was regularly scheduled flights here. In the 50s, there were 4 flights a day from LaGuardia from Glens Falls using 40-seat Con Air and Martin airliners. Deregulation, opening of the Northway, and finally the 1969 Mohawk Airlines crash on Pilot Knob put an end to all of that. Our current Part 139 Category 4 allows for scheduled service with 10 to 30 seat aircraft and unscheduled use of 30-plus seat aircraft. I do recall that years ago there were occasional charter flights with a Convair 580 turboprop with about 50 seats. I recall that these were bringing people to the Sagamore, but have not been aware of any large aircraft for many, many years. Since most 10 to 50 seat aircraft are no longer in production, it's unlikely that we will see demand in the future. With this in mind, there does not appear to be a legal need to continuing the 14 CFR 139 status, but the decision is more complicated. The airport is in many ways a business. As such, maintaining a high level of maintenance and safety helps to attract business aircraft and potential future airport-based companies. Having Part 139 status advises that we have a commitment to safety and other factors. It's somewhat like being board certified in medicine or hospital accreditation. There are a number of airports similar to ours that have maintained 139, including Oxford, Connecticut, Westfield, Saranac Lake, Poughkeepsie, Rome, Jamestown, Reading, and Rutland, Vermont. When I polled the pilot group, there were a number of concerns about dropping the Part 139 status. Briefly, they were, 1, concern that any change would reduce the odds of getting future FAA, and New York State grants. These are a substantial part of our cash flow over the years. While 139 status doesn't officially help us get these grants, the process is rather subjective overall, so that it's probably a significant help. 2, concern that the level of airport maintenance would be reduced. A number of other airports which have been poorly maintained were specifically noted. 3, concern that the Part 139 status would be difficult to reestablish if a business need developed. 4, concern that future FAA rules would make it harder for business jets to come here without the 139 status. 3, concern that everything would fall apart if Don DeGraw left for a higher paying job. 6, concerns about oversight of the FBO, particularly the fuel farm. And 7, concerns about wildlife management. Mowing helps keeps the critters away. A large bird, coyote, or deer can do a huge amount of damage to aircraft landing or taking off. Overall, dropping Part 139 status would eliminate the need to maintain fire equipment and training, as well as remove the nitpicking level of FAA inspection. At the same time, there are some benefits that go with continuing the status quo related to attracting new business. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeGraw is just giving us an update currently on this, obviously. We're not here to make a decision either way. I think we need to have he's brought it up that he would like an option after exploring some of those questions, I'm sure, and others. I had a meeting with him yesterday, and he would just like to have the option of looking into it further, discussing with the FAA, and addressing those questions that Dr. Schwanker had and the pilots, and any other questions that this committee may have. So there's no decision. I'm not looking for any. He's not looking for any decision on yay or nay today. Just what is the flavor of the committee on should he have the option of answering all those questions of going forward, or should he stop right now? So discussion, Ms. Sieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wondered if it was appropriate. I was not privy to our FBO's opinion on this through Rich Area. Could Steve weigh in?
Sure.
Sure, I can.
Yes, Steve, love to hear you.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Steve Abbott, General Manager from Rich Air at the FBO at the Warren County Airport, for those of you who aren't familiar. We have no objection at the bottom line with whether or not the county wishes to keep or drop the 139 certificate. And as Ms. Bramerd mentioned, she had reached out to several people, including us as well, as did Dawn, and discussion was put to us to say, what are your thoughts on this process? And I'll read some of my bullet points that I had mentioned to Claudia and to Dawn that I think may or may not help you, but as far as we're concerned, again, we have no objection to this. And some of the reasons are as follows. For the part of the grant funding that we can see, the FAA has already got us, according to their asset report, in the books for the next 5 years of roughly $13 million. And so to if we wish to consider dropping the 139 certificate, we don't anticipate that would change their view of having that funding available for us. Regarding operational safety, we're still required by our fuel distributor to maintain the 139, 321 safety standards, and that includes, a very stringent regulations and guidelines for any airport, not just this one. So we're as trained as the JFKs or the Albanys of the world to handle and operate any incoming, outgoing air traffic at the airport. And then as far as the operation goes at the airport itself, the 139 essentially was designed to, as Claudia mentioned briefly from other mentions from other pilots, was its intent for us with a limited airport operating certificate to be able to have unscheduled large air carrier operations, and we have not seen that at the airport for some time now. Not that we don't want them, but we don't anticipate that need in the near future. Again, we don't see an impact in our operation. We certainly see everything continuing as status quo. We also continue to see a growth at the airport, whether or not we keep the certificate. So, however the county should decide whether to keep the 139 certificate or not, we're in favor of. But this is some of our reasons why we were no objection to dropping the 139 certificate if they decided to or not.
Thank you, Steve.
Welcome.
Any other questions from the committee? Ms. Bramer and then Mr. Wild.
Yeah, I'm not on the committee. I want to say that what I did hear a bunch of different concerns. The overall consensus I felt like was that the pilots, they had concerns, but overall, if Don feels like he's addressed all of them, which I think he has, he feels pretty comfortable, that they are not going to be super, they're not going to overly object to us dropping the 139 certification. I know it sounded like a lot. I realized that after I sat down, I was like, okay, that probably sounded like they were very opposed, but mostly they just want to make sure that all of those things have been looked into, and I think that Don either has or he's going to once the committee gives them the green light to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Wild?
Chairman, thank you. Two things. 139, I'm curious about the costs as well as the effort required to reestablish that certification if we had let it go. So, Don, I know you can't give me an answer today, but I'd like that going forward in terms of what it's going to take to make that happen.
Well, I can give it to you today. It would be fairly easy to reestablish 139. We would be doing all the same paperwork if we didn't have 139 that we would if we had 139. So all that would be in place. I would basically treat the airport as if it was still 139 certified. It just wouldn't be held to that standard in case something went wrong or there was a paperwork flub. You have, with 139, training has to be done 12 months to the end, every 12 consecutive months to the end of the month. If we were off by a day or two, it really wouldn't matter if we didn't have 139, but I would do everything that we normally would do in that case. So in order to reestablish it, it would simply be calling them back up, telling them we had an air carrier that wanted to operate out of the airport, and that they would just come and inspect us, look at the paperwork, and we'd be reestablished. The only thing, the cost would be if we didn't maintain the ARF training certification. So we would have to send our guys to the ARF school, which is required every 12 months. And we would probably be doing that anyways, just to ensure that we have at least one fully trained firefighter at all times. Right now I keep 2 on staff. Maybe I'd reduce it to 1 and alternate them every other year, which would reduce expenses. But it would be pretty seamless to bring it back if there was a need. Now, if we just wanted to bring it back because we wanted to bring it back and we didn't have an air carrier that didn't want to operate here, they might not let us have it back. We would have to show an operational need for it. But I think just getting it back, if there was a need, they would allow that very quickly.
So if I can expand on this, understanding a little bit more about 139, is this something like that we're qualified as a emergency kind of airport?
No, 139 is in place to allow airports to receive air carriers operations. So if you have an air carrier operation, which is a Southwest, United Airlines, American Airlines, or some type of a special charter for an air carrier, they can only fly into airports with 139 certification. So we're holding a certification for an operation that doesn't exist. And it costs the county money. It's not a tremendous amount of money, but it is an expense, and that's why we brought it to your attention that we're holding a certificate for an operation that doesn't exist.
If I can, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead. Another question, Mr. Wall? Go ahead.
Rich Air, I'm curious about marketing our airport and the facility, and whether the 139 makes a difference to private carriers.
Not typically. In fact, we reached out to a lot of charter companies and stuff that currently do business with us now at the airport, and as long as we're maintaining our current training that we are mandated to do anyway, they have no objection one way or the other as to what the certificate is there in place. So they're more concerned with our operation as an FBO entity, whether or not they're going to be attracted to come to Glens Falls, essentially. Yes, the facilities also incorporated that picture as well, but their standards are about 90% based off of what the FBO can provide to those charter companies that come into the airport.
90%. It's up to you guys to reach this.
Exactly.
I
But
read
it's
that
a
already.
team effort, it really is. I mean,
We have something to do with that, right?
Yeah. I'd say.
We can't, but that 10% is very big, because we can't do our 90% without the huge 10% from the county.
I understand. I was, well, I was partially kidding. Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
thank you.
Yep, Ms. Sieber?
Thank you. Back when we had many discussions a few years ago about air carriers coming into Warren County, I mean, I'm your biggest fan of hoping someday, you know, we'll see those types of flights into the airport, but my dreams were crushed with that when I was told that there was a decision from the FAA based on nautical miles, and that when we're never getting, we just aren't eligible to ever have that type of an air carrier. Am I like imagining that, or did that
Well,
happen?
you're talking about the Essential Air Service Program,
EAS
which is a
program.
subsidy for air carriers.
Okay.
Our airport doesn't qualify for that subsidy.
So this Part 139, you said it would allow us to receive air carrier standard.
So yeah. So the Essential Air Service Program is a subsidy that promotes air service in rural communities. There's a few communities around that still get that subsidy. Rutland is one, Saranac Lake, Ogdensburg, but they qualified from that from deregulation going back to 1987 or whatever deregulation was. It must be at the time that Glens Falls may not have had scheduled air carrier service when deregulation came in 78 actually. But regardless, there are certain conditions that have to be in place for those airports to receive those funds, and one of the things is the proximity to a medium hub or a small hub airport. So we're even if we had that, we're so close to Albany, we would never get that. It's kind of interesting though, Rutland for instance, Cape Air's operating out of Rutland on the EAS program. They're a 9-seater. They have a 139 certificate, but they really don't need it because it's 9 seats. So they could actually get rid of their 139 certificate, which they choose not to, which is understandable because they have people paying for tickets and they want to ensure that that level of service is there. But they really don't even need their 139 certificate. So we could operate with a 9-seat air carrier out of here and still not be 139.
I was going to say, you're piquing my interest.
Yeah.
Okay, I can certainly catch up with you behind the scenes on that. That I thought was relevant.
Mr. Conover?
Yeah. I mean, right now, we have a standard, and that we know what we need to achieve. The FAA comes in and reviews to make sure that we meet that standard. If we do away with the 139 standard and the FAA review, what standard do we move to, and how do we ensure that we're meeting that standard?
That's a great question. So it just happens that my 139 inspection starts tonight at 5:30, and they'll be here through Friday. And they're going to inspect us the physical facility and all the paperwork and the training that we do to ensure that we're meeting the 139 standard for air carriers. If that certification were to go away, we still have responsibilities under grant assurances. So when we sign for a grant, that says that we're going to maintain the airport to a certain level. It's not the same level as a 139 airport, but it is to a certain level to ensure that the public dollars that are being invested in this airport are put to good use and that the public can use the airport safely. So we still have to plow the snow, we still have to maintain the markings and all those things. The difference is, right now I think my markings look pretty good. My inspector tonight at 5:30 when we go out and do the night inspection, she might not think my markings look good enough and she may require us to repaint the airport. That's $100,000. It's not $100,000 that I currently have budgeted, but it could be $100,000 that we have to cough up over the next couple of months when summertime comes. So we still, and the FAA will still come occasionally and do compliance inspections for the grant assurances. It doesn't happen very often. Maybe once every 5 years they'll come and take a look at it to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to. There's no grass growing up through the runway, the paintings, the markings are being maintained, the lights are being maintained, all that type of thing. So there's still a system in place, but it just doesn't meet the highest level of safety that the FAA wants for air carriers when you're buying a ticket on Southwest.
That would be my primary concern would be that right now we have a standard, everybody's directed at meeting that standard. The FAA comes in and they do, in my language, audits to that standard. If we're not meeting that standard, they write a report. You look your deficient, your striping, for example, or whatever, and then we're required to make those improvements. And so my concern would be that, actually my concern was articulated by the pilots when they said our concern would be that Don would leave. And I don't like a system, any system that's dependent on one person. I have a real concern over that. And I know you're going to maintain the airport. I know you're going to maintain it to a wonderful standard, but it seems to me that it becomes a little more subjective. I like the idea of professional airport people coming in and saying, it's not good enough, especially if it's savings $10,000. I mean, we're talking about, $200,000 or $300,000. We might think, well, maybe the paint's good enough. I don't know, but I'm not sure I would think that even then. So I guess what I'm saying is that I like the idea of that outside. And that's annual, they come in.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest value for us for this 139. We have a set of eyes, professional, that come in every year and they grade us. And if there's ever an accident or an incident, we can stand by, the last inspection that we had. If the pilot says, well, I couldn't see the centerline markings. Well, we say, well, we just had a 139 inspection and we passed the centerline markings. We can hold on to that. So I think there's a value there in keeping the 139 for that.
There are fines if we fail inspections. Do we ever have any fines?
Even a couple of years ago, when I had first taken over, we had a Part 139 inspection, and there were probably 10 or 12 things that we were deficient on. I don't see that there was a fine, but it was required in a certain amount of time that we had them fixed.
Right.
And we did. But I don't recall there ever being a fine associated with it.
Typically, there's no fines. Typically, they come in, they'll identify the discrepancy, they'll give you a reasonable amount of time to fix the discrepancy, and then if you can't fix it by that time, they'll ask you why, and they'll reset another time to get that fine. Now, if you ignore their findings and choose not to fix it, they have the option of pulling your certificate, and they could also give you fines if they want. That's the worst case scenario. It normally doesn't happen.
Mr. Wild, did you have a question?
I did. I just, a request that the airport is a significant asset of ours, especially when I put my hat on about economic development. So before we make any significant change here, I'd like to get an opportunity to speak with some of our thought leaders about this and kind of get the perception of what's going on in our business community, our economic development community about our airport, what our thoughts are going forward.
So I think this is a great conversation we're having, because a lot of people don't know what 139 is, so now we're getting educated about it. And it's important that the county understands that even though we don't have operations that require 139, we still have the certificate and we're maintaining it, and we're being inspected on an annual basis. So I fully support the county wanting to keep it. In fact, I think that's that shows a great level of support from the county leaders to the FAA and the airport that we want to maintain this certificate. But by the same token, I don't want you to keep it out of ignorance, thinking that we need it. Because we don't need it, but if we're going to keep it, you know, keep it because we were educated about it, not out of ignorance.
Mr. McGowan, I'm sorry, did you have another question, Mr. Wall?
No.
No. Mr. McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there other facilities, you know, the other thing I like about it, it's a check and balance type thing, is to make sure that we're all up to stuff, and, you know, we all have busy lives, and sometimes, like I said, you know, I don't have a problem with a day or two, or a week, but at least we have a schedule there, we have to maintain it. You know, are there other companies that would come in and do an oversight, you know, for, you know, a lot less of a price, just to, you know, come in and
Well, the FAA does it for free, and, you know...
Now, what's the 10 grand for?
Well,
That's just for the training.
That's
Oh,
for our
for the
side of it,
training, right.
keeping our standards up. I mean, we don't pay for the FAA to come. And, I
So
think
you're gonna do the training anyway, especially like, I mean, I know the fire apparatus is a big cost. You're gonna maintain that anyway, so really, overall, by maintaining your levels of a 139, but saying we actually don't have a 139, you know, is that all it's gonna save us, is, you know, you say give or take, could it be like $4,000 savings or something? I mean...
Well, you're paying for a higher standard. So anytime you pay for a higher standard, you're going to pay more money. So let's use the airfield markings, for instance. We may have, with the 139 certificate, we may have to paint them every 3 years instead of every 5 years. Okay? We're just maintaining things at the next higher level, the highest level possible. And that costs a little more.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bruno?
So, to that end, what is the history with the FAA and the 139 and their findings as it relates to any required, I won't call them improvements, but maintenance?
So, over the years, the airport's done very well with their inspections. I think when there was a time period where the airport manager was on part-time, a lot of the paperwork kind of went to the wayside, and there was several findings there. But last year we did very well. We only had a couple discrepancies, and they were unavoidable.
So as long as you're anticipating these inspections and whatnot, not that that's your only motivation, but you're maintaining the airport to a very good standard and diminishing the possibility of findings that would incur big dollar costs, or any cost.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're maintaining the airport to the highest level possible, you know, within reason, obviously, and we're maintaining the paperwork and supporting documentation that show that.
Thank you.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I speak to Rich here?
Sure. Would you like to ask a question of Steve?
Yeah.
Sure.
The, now that we have some new hangars that are coming out, which are larger, which is, you know, obviously going to bring in more jets, we really increased on our jet intake, let's say, of landings in that. Is that 139, is that a good standard to have for the pilots of these jets, knowing that we have this upper standing? I mean, do they feel more comfortable, you know, landing at our airport over another one that maybe not?
Well, it's never a bad standard to have, but far as they're concerned, as long as they can get in and out of the airport, they're happy, because they're on a different, operation altogether. Most of them are private jets, operating under a Part 91 certificate, Part 91 instead of the Part 135, which is a little bit less stringent, basically saying that, weather-wise they can go in less, favorable conditions than an airliner may have to adhere to or something like that. So, yes, they want, as clean as a runway as the next person does, and they're very thankful for the airports that we have. But I don't think the 139 is dependent on the condition of the airport. I think that's a testament to the facility operator and the county that maintains the airport, as well as the FBO operator. In our case, it has to be Rich Air, but it can be anybody to maintain it to that level that it is right now. But you don't have to have the 139 certificate. Their concern is runway length, and do they have a place to store their hangar? Are the conditions suitable?
Not there. Do they have a place to store
Their airplane, right, their jet, right. Do they have a place to store their airplane, and can they take off and land safely? That's their main objective. And, right now they're currently happy,
So with these standards that, Mr. McGraw, we do hold, painting, really visual thing, coming in, now that you brought it up, I remember seeing in a few movies there, the striping makes a big force, and the lighting and stuff like that, which I know you'd maintain in that, but like you said, you instead of every 3 years, you could go to 5 years. I mean, what is the, I don't know, for the amount of money and, like I said, it's a tough call. I'm with Supervisor Sieber, and that it's just a little bit, I don't know what to say here.
Well, we don't have to say anything. We can just talk about it and, continue the conversation. So we don't have to have...
Yeah, we're not looking for any decision here today.
Oh, good.
This was just a pending item for discussion, and I'm going to close it now, the discussion. Oh, Mr. Chairman, do you have something?
Do you need effect on our insurance rates?
No. That was the first thing I checked.
So, if it's the will of the committee, we can bring this up again next month if we want to continue the discussion. I think this was very advantageous. I'll allow one more comment because
Well,
we're running
I just wondered if
a half
you
an hour
could get
late.
a copy of those comments from Ms. Bramer.
Yeah, I did forward some to Rachel, so I'll try to get those out.
The comments from the
We'll manage to
Pilots
get them out
Association.
before. It's fine. I mean, they were happy to be able to provide input, and I do think the overall consensus was they are happy leaving it in Don's hands, but he's saying the maintenance levels are gonna be the same, which that's what he's saying. But you heard them, if Don leaves, and we just need to make sure that same level is maintained. I wanna make one more point. I don't think Sarasota has 139.
They don't.
They don't. Yes, one final comment, Ms. Sieber, and then I'm closing this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps we could also have the FBO's comments forwarded out at the same time as the pilot's comments, so we have the full picture along with, that way it's just a better
That's
picture.
very
But
good
I was
suggestion.
hoping maybe we could go 8 more minutes so that we could be equal to being over, as my committee was that you so graciously
Yes.
told me about.
Well, that's what I'm trying to avoid. So we're going to close this discussion. We'll put it on next month's agenda for further discussion. Nothing's been decided either way. So let's go to number 5, review of the monthly FBO and hangar review.
So I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of 2018 versus 2019 dollars. We made about $61,000 additional in revenue in 2019 due to the new lease agreement and FBO agreement with Rich Air. So we're doing very well in that regard. And that's all I have.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion from the public? I'll open it up. I don't see anybody. Okay, motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Hogan, second by Mr. Diamond. Yes, we beat your length of the meeting, Ms. Sieber.
Close.